Hi everyone. Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Happy to see that many of you registered for this session. And I'm very pleased to welcome Clemens Koltringer from the Vienna Tourist Board, who will be your moderator for today's session. So I will give him the word to go on now. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Thanks, Pauline. Welcome to this virtual Research and Statistics and Editorial Board group meeting. We're very excited. It's a day to celebrate. Even in this time, I think we have to really look for those little occasions to also be proud on our work and also to celebrate a bit. Let me share the first information. So I would be pleased if we all turn on our cameras so it's much more interactive and much more positive, I think, than talking against the screen. But please mute your microphones. So once we start with the discussion, just turn it on and use the chat functionality. It's a rather easygoing meeting, as we usually do in Research and Statistics, but with very in-depth insights and figures. So don't be scared to ask questions and to ask us. So I have the honor to be your moderator today. I'm chair of the ECM editorial board. I'm from the Vienna Tourist Board, and most of you are close friends of mine, I would say, due to my 12 years with ECM. I think we most have met. So we have 90 minutes together, and these are kind of the housekeeping rules for today. As I said, it's a meeting format, very casual. You have the opportunity, once we're not in the presentation mode, to also change between speakers view and gallery view. So we'll also always be able to see who is currently talking. Here on the top right, you could choose the current setting or the setting you want to use. It would be good if you kind of change your credentials so that we can see who you are, or once you participate or join the conversation or discussion, just identify yourself, tell me where you're from, so that we can relate to you if we don't know each other yet. Yes, please, during the presentations, I would like to invite you to use the chat function. That helps a lot to also then compile the questions and address it to the right people. And I would like to ask Pauline to record this session for our friends from ECM to join our latest discussions and insights. And now I'd like to hand over to our president, Petra Stusek from Ljubljana Tourist Board, for a very warm welcome, and please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Clemens, sincerely. Well, hi, dear colleagues, and of course, dear friends. Welcome to this new ECM webinar for a not to be missed occasion in the history of ECMs each year. In previous webinars, we wanted to recognize the extent and seriousness of the challenges we are facing and how the DMO's funding crisis is clearly multidimensional. And then we looked at data and how are they preparing us to a recovery. Today, we are launching two reports with results from the year 2019 at the premises of this crisis, which is hitting us now. It is actually really hard to believe how much the situation has changed in the past year, and no one could expect this sudden revolution affecting the whole world. And those reports can serve to prove the evident economic significance of European city tourism. It is essential to understand where were we before the crisis and to strive now towards these targets in our recovery efforts. And the purpose of this report is to highlight, well, the resilience of the tourism sector over the year 2019, which was especially good for the leisure and business segments. And this seems like centuries away. However, it is a great reminder of building a solid ground for times of recovery. And it is crucial for DMOs to have a detailed approach of the different markets before the pandemic. We all know that travel, tourism, and hospitality are amongst the most affected sectors in this ever unseen COVID-19 pandemic. And the closing down of the entire cities and countries, travel restrictions and bans have brought the tourism and transportation sector to a standstill. And the impact is economic and social, affecting the livelihood of tourism and transport workers and suppliers, as well as our families and whole communities. And destinations are all hit, no matter of size, geographical location, attractiveness. Our reputation as safe places are highly challenged. And still, the tourism sector is in a unique position to contribute to wider recovery plans and actions. And despite this challenging scenario, 89% of DMOs are almost in total agreement that the crisis will lead travel and tourism towards a more sustainable future. Also, most of the DMOs feel that the crisis has strengthened our political capital. At the moment, rebuilding tourism is a high political priority in many destinations, and DMOs are showing the relevance when coordinating and operating the recovery effort. So please let me just allow, me to sincerely thank the incredible teams who have devoted time and invested resources in these reports, and in particular to Professor Karl Weber and his team at Model University, Bojana Žekan and Jason Steinmetz. A tremendous thank you to Clemens Koettinger, chair of the ECM benchmarking report, and Andre Mora from Lisbon, who took the lead of the meeting statistic report, and the rest of the Copenhagen group, Lone, Allentorp Salat, and Mike Wedel Hansen. And last but certainly not least, I have to credit you, members, and all the participating cities for your regular and timely provision of those base information. I'm pretty sure you will find the statistics and analyses contained in the report helpful as you track your own destinations, performance, and seek to anticipate your inspiration and making future trends in our city tourism. Thank you, enjoy today, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Petra, for these very nice words. Yes, it's indeed time to say thank you, and hot off the press, now they are there. The reports, the meeting statistics report, as well as the European Cities Marketing benchmarking report are already available on the internet for you to download. But of course, downloading and reading a report is one thing, but it's of course better to get the insights firsthand from those people who really worked hard on that. It was of course the cities you can see there in the working groups, but it was also all of you. And I would like to quote Karl Weber here, like our reports and TURMIS is like the Wikipedia of tourism statistics. And it's the most important source of city tourism statistics because we all contribute to that, and it's a joint effort. So I would like to show you what we're going to see today or hear today. First of all, Jason Steinmetz from Modul University is going to introduce us to the meeting statistics report. Then we will listen to Bojana Žekan on the benchmark report. And then we have prepared a little outlook session for you. So it's not just enough, of course, to show statistics, but we also have to have a discussion on, and also on the learnings. We also want to focus, okay, what is, from an analyst's point of view, what have we learned in 2020 and what should we look at probably in 2021? For this discussion, we will have Karl Weber, Jason, Harry Mipri as head of the Research and Statistics Group, and myself giving you some more interpretations and insights. And of course, we will always have time for questions and answers. I would suggest just put them in the chat functionality so we can compile them. These are the people who will be moderating and talking. And now I will hand over the presentation to Jason to introduce you to the latest edition of the meeting statistics report. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Clemens. Thank you, Petra. Thank you, Pauline, for organizing, and thank you, everyone, for attending. So I have just 15 slides to try to encapsulate this year's edition of the Meetings and Statistics Report. So what I've chosen to do is highlight what I think are some of the most important insights or benchmarks from the 2019 statistics that we can use as our targets as we're entering our recovery from the pandemic. So if I can, go here. Okay, so to start with, though, I want to give everyone a quick review of the methodology for the Meetings and Statistics report. So for this year's edition, we are very pleased that we had 46 of our partner cities provide data for the report, and data is entered through the TourMIS platform using Excel templates in order to ensure accuracy and consistency, that we don't have any missing data or data that are labeled incorrectly. The data that we collect for the meetings report are the start and end date for each meeting, the type of meeting, whether it's considered corporate or non-corporate, the number of participants, and then also the scope of the meeting, whether or not the meeting is national or international with regards to the participants. It's also optional for cities to report the venue where the meeting was held and the ICCA theme of the meeting. In order to maintain consistency between cities, we use the UNWTO definitions. For example, a meeting is considered an international meeting if it has 20% or more of the participants being from outside of the country where the meeting is being held. However, that being said, different cities have different data practice, and not all cities report all types of meetings. Some cities define international meetings slightly different, and in those cases, it's noted in the report. But we make every effort to maintain consistency with our data so that we can make valid conclusions. And it's also just important to note that the report focuses on meetings of 10 participants or more, and trade shows without a conference program are also excluded from the reports and the analysis. So the very top line general overview for 2019 meetings was that we had from the 46 cities reporting data, we have 59,000 total meetings that were reported. I'm sorry, I have to go back. Something happened. Okay, apologies. So 59,000 meetings, which represents nearly 10.9 million participants and 25.3 million participant days. And comparing these data from 2019 to what we saw in 2018, we can see that there was a lot of growth in the meetings sector. So overall, we saw a 7.6% increase in the total number of meetings. This is based on the 33 cities that reported data for both 2018 and 2019. So a 7.6% increase in the total number of meetings, slightly stronger growth in the non-corporate segment compared to the corporate segment. However, the corporate segment saw some very strong increases in the number of participants, a 69% increase in participants and a 75% increase in participant days. What I'd like to share with you next is just a snapshot of the patterns of seasonality for all meetings in general for 2019 based on our sample of 46 cities. And these patterns of seasonality are consistent from previous years as well. So we see that July, August, and December are the low months in general across Europe, with peaks in the number of meetings in September, October, and November. What's also interesting to observe here, though, is that when we look at meetings and compare meetings to the number of participants and participant days, we can see that in April, we had relatively, the meetings in April had a higher than average number of participants, while the meetings in May had on average fewer participants. I'd like to focus now a little bit on the non-corporate meeting sector in particular. So what we can see for the non-corporate sector is that about 41% of all meetings were international meetings. However, the number of participants that were coming from international meetings is 56%, and the number of participant days is 68%. What this means is that while there are fewer meetings that are international in the non-corporate sector, they are contributing more participants than the national meetings in general, right? And we can also see on the right-hand side here the different themes for the meetings. So in the non-corporate sector, medical sciences, science, education, economics, and technology, these are the top themes for which people were meeting in 2019, based on our sample of 26 cities reporting the theme data. I'd like to show you now some information about the non-corporate meetings by size. So the largest portion of meetings for the non-corporate sector are between 40 and 200 participants. That they make up 52% of all of the non-corporate meetings. And that's followed by meetings with participants of fewer than 40, which is approximately 1/5 of all non-corporate meetings, 21%. And then we can see that there are fewer meetings that are larger. 200 to 500 participants represent 17% of all non-corporate meetings, and then we have up to 5% of all of our meetings with 1,000 participants or more. However, you'll also notice that these larger meetings obviously are contributing much more to the number of participant days. And then when we look at the breakdown between international meetings versus national meetings according to the size of the meetings, we'll see that the smaller meetings are predominantly national in scope, right? The small meetings of fewer than 40 participants, 70% of those are national meetings. Whereas when we get to meetings that are between 500 and 1,000 participants, now it's an even split. 50% are considered international and the other 50% are national. And then the very large meetings are skewing towards primarily international attendees. Looking at non-corporate meeting duration, we see that half of all non-corporate meetings are 1 day in length, then followed by another 24% that are 2 days in length. And there's a very clear trend then, very few meetings that are 6 days or more in duration. But when we look at the length of, or the duration of the meetings, we can see that the number of participants, the highest number of participants are actually coming from the 3-day length meetings. So in other words, the larger meetings are 3 days in duration on average. And we can also take a look at the distribution of national and international meetings according to the duration. And again, we see that the shorter meetings are primarily national in scope, right? 77% of all one-day meetings are primarily national, whereas the longer meetings, 3 days and above, now these are primarily international meetings, which is interesting now when we're going to look at the corporate sector in a few moments. And then the last thing to share with you for the non-corporate meetings sector is the breakdown where these meetings are being held by venues. So Congress and convention centers are hosting 15% of the meetings. 41% of non-corporate meetings are being hosted at hotels, and then 27% at the universities. When we look at participants though, and which venues are hosting the most participants, 53% of all participants for non-corporate meetings are at the Congress and convention centers. And then hotels have a 13% share, universities a 12% share, and other venues are making up the difference of 22%. So this simply means that the larger meetings of 100 or plus more attendees are being hosted at Congress and convention centers more often than at hotels. So let's take a quick look at the corporate meetings overview, and here we can see that we had 42,000 corporate meetings reported in 2019. Of those, 69% of those meetings were considered national, and the other 31% were considered international. And this distribution of national and international meetings follows through with the number of participants and participant days. So we can see that there were always more national participants and national participant days than international. However, the number of participant days does get closer to a balance between national and international. And when we look at themes for corporate meetings, most cities reported their meetings in the other category or unclassified category. Those that did have details on the theme, medical science was the most popular theme for corporate meetings, followed by commerce, technology, general meetings, and industry. Comparing corporate meetings by size, we see that almost 90% of all meetings in the corporate sector are of 200 participants or less, with about half of those being meetings of 40 participants or less. And breaking down these corporate meetings by international and national, we see that, again, it's primarily national meetings or national participants for all corporate meetings, that approximately 2/3 to 75% of all corporate meeting participants or corporate meetings have national participants. Looking at duration, again, one-day meetings are the most popular. 2/3 of all corporate meetings are just 1 day in length, and 16% of corporate meetings are 2 days in length. And then, you know, we see the trend, very few meetings with longer duration. And here, however, we do see that the longer corporate meetings are, the more likely it is that those meetings are international in scope. So whereas there are only 23% of our corporate meetings having an international scope for one-day meetings, the 6-day meetings, that ratio has flipped. So now 74% of all meetings that are 6 days or longer are considered international. And looking at venues, we see that when it comes to the number of meetings being hosted, hotels dominate with 85% of meetings being hosted at hotels. However, when we consider the number of participants and which venues are actually holding the most participants, now we see that there's a more even distribution between Congress and convention centers hosting 31% of all meeting participants in 2019. 40% of all participants were at hotels, and other venues accounting for 28%. And it's also very, very clear here that universities and other scientific venues are hosting relatively few, almost no corporate meetings in 2019. And this is consistent with previous years as well. So those are the highlights that I wanted to share with you this afternoon, because we have just a little bit of time. But I do want to mention, you know, that there's a lot more information included in the reports, including detailed trend analysis comparing 2018 with 2019. But it's important to note that there's been a relative stability between 2018 and 2019. And so you'll be able to see, you know, trend analysis for corporate and non-corporate sectors. We also have included in the meetings and statistics report city level benchmarking tables with meetings, participant days, these different metrics we can compare at the non-corporate and corporate sectors, and nationally and internationally as well. So you'll be able to look to see which cities are high and which cities are low for each of these different benchmarks. And then new for this year's report is a meetings and industry barometer, which is a qualitative survey that we did with all of the cities that reported data for 2019. So we asked these city experts, the meetings experts, what their opinions and what their outlook for 2020 and 2021 were, and I'll be sharing some of those insights in the outlook section of this afternoon's webinar. So looking forward towards the next edition of our report, I just want to highlight that we are always working to increase the number of city participants. This year we had 46 participants, which was an increase over last year. So hopefully we can continue that trend so that this meeting and statistics report continues to improve. And we're also working to improve the data and reporting processes to make it as easy as possible for everyone to report their meetings data. And so we're working on improving the templates that we use and the interface with Tourmis. And then lastly, in the next year, we're going to be putting increasing emphasis on cities reporting the completeness of their data, or in other words, the number of meetings that are actually not being reported, so that we can weight the data and make more valid comparisons between cities that are similar in size and scope. Okay, so thank you all very much for your attention. I know that that's a lot of information that I just went through. So if you have any questions whatsoever, my contact information is here on the screen, and I'm very welcoming of any questions right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Fantastic. And I think especially the barometer adds a lot of insights and expertise to the whole report. Well, I think this year we learned a lot about message control. So we decided not to show the 2020 forecast because it's, I think, just, yeah, a bit too demotivating, but we will have the 2021 forecast in the Outlook session. So let me check if we have some questions from the audience to see the chat function. Here we go. So we have a question from Bettina. What is the reason for 61 reporting, like 61 cities reporting in 2015? So probably why is there this drop or what happened?
Oh, that's a very good question. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in this project at that point, so I would have to defer to some colleagues that have been involved with the meetings and statistics report at that time.
All right, maybe we can have a discussion later with Carl then, because he knows, of course, the whole history about the report. Do we have more?
Sure, I can say something if you want. I think that goes back, and my memory is always quite bad, but in 2015, we changed the way how we collected data. As far as I know, until 2015, everything was entered by us into the system, and in 2015 we changed it to a way where the members had to enter the data themselves, because we found out it was not possible that we would do all the work for the cities at that time. Yeah, so we lost a few cities, unfortunately, by making this change. But I think it was an important change. Otherwise, we would not have been able to continue with this type of procedure. Yeah.
Actually, the report is not there for the report itself, because the whole idea was also to help us cities to professionalize our, like the collection of our meeting statistics and to learn from each other how to collect data. And actually the latest developments in TURMIS, ECM has invested a lot in actually also enabling us to put in our meeting statistics data in TURMIS. And if you have not checked that out yet, you can also allow your partners in the city to enter their own data in TURMIS, and you can become a moderator and a supervisor, so to say, so to overlook and overcome all the meeting statistics in your city. Because this is one of the biggest challenges, of course. Many cities do have their own systems, others don't. But ECM is here to help us professionalize our work and businesses. And I think it's also inevitable to discuss on how we really collect the data, because this is certainly a big challenge to compile all this information. Do we have more questions from the audience at this point in time? All right, this chat function is always available for you, and we will have an opportunity to discuss later on, anyways, more in detail. So I would hand over to our next presenter, Boshana Sekan from Modul University. You all know her very well, I think. She's also with ECM for many, many years. And she will now introduce us to the benchmarking report 2019-2020. Boshana, please take over the control, and the stage is yours.
Will do. Thank you, Clemens. So let me just see. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here and very proud to present the 16th official edition of the benchmarking report. And I would like to start my presentation by saying thank you primarily to ECM, to Petra, to Flavie, to Benedict and Pauline primarily, and to the editorial group, which was chaired by Clemens and Thomas, because the feedback that we have received from them, it was really tremendous in improving our report, right? So big thank you from Carl and me primarily. So the report, as you know, features 2019 results, same as the meetings report, but we should think of these results as our targets, right, in the post-COVID-19 recovery efforts. So here I will also echo Petra's words, what she was saying in her introduction words, meaning the idea was that we highlight the resilience of the sector and that I provide you with the crucial insights into the competitiveness of European city tourism, right? And once you see the figures, same like you could see from the Jason's presentation, you will definitely be convinced about the economic significance of modern city tourism, right? And what made me really, really happy was the fact that we were able to include 119 European cities. So in spite of very difficult years for all of us, for you as the cities and for us, of course, as researchers, I would really like to thank to all cities who worked with us over the past months and provided data, because I know it was not easy, and I was in touch with many of you to clarify the data, but we made it and we managed to include 119 European cities, which is exactly the same number as we had before. So I think we can be really, really happy about the sample we had this year in spite of everything that was happening, right? So, of course, I have only 15 minutes to guide you through a massive report, which is 130 pages. So I will do my best just to highlight the most interesting things, of course. And what I first included is basically alphabetical order of the cities that are included in this year's report. So you will see that we have cities from Reykjavik to Nicosia and Istanbul. So we have all the major cities included. And we were also happy that we could include Dublin, for instance. So that would be one of the cities which are new in the sample we had this year, right? So it's very geographically dispersed sample, which made us also really happy about. And without further ado, of course, the top performing cities, top 15 cities, you see the usual suspects, right? Especially when you look at the top 5. So the ranking of the top 5 cities remained identical as in the previous year, right? So we have London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, and Istanbul. And if you look in the overall top 15, you will only notice that Milan now left the top 15 when it comes to total bed nights, and Dublin replaced it in the top 15 ranking here. So you see that we have a range from close to 14 million to more than 85 million, of course, by our friends in London, followed by Paris, more than 52 million. So, of course, the total bed nights are heavily then skewed towards these big cities as well. But what may be interesting also to observe would be this percentage change. So we can see a major winners when it comes to the growth between 2018 and 19. So in this respect, we see Istanbul performing very well with 14.1%, Amsterdam with more than 10% growth rate, Dublin, Vienna, and Munich. So those would be the top 5 when it comes to percentage change in terms of the growth between the 2 years. And also you can see this in the charts as well, and you know these charts very well. So these are the same numbers that you could see in the table before, but you can also, why I included it here is that you also see the nominal average, right? So we can see that the nominal average was more than 26 million here of bed nights. It's a very similar story if you're looking into international bed nights. So again, London leading the way here when it comes to international bed nights, and the nominal average being close to 19 million of bed nights. So that would be regarding the top performers. So let's have a look now at the source markets, right? So the usual source markets that we analyze every single year. So you see the top ranked ones when it comes to the bed nights in 2019 were the US market, Germany, and the UK. So those would be the top 3 source markets when it comes to the bed nights. See, the bed nights generated by the US markets were more than 46 million. So this, which is of course a massive number. What's also interesting to observe would be percentage changes. So we see a major growth in Italian market, but also in German market and Japanese market, right? And I also indicated here a note that figures for Italy and Russia may be used with caution due to the impact of London sample size for these markets. So just for the interpretation purposes, so that is clear. So what I also wanted to show you, of course, would be this table translated into figures so that you can also see the average relative change for all the markets being about 4.7%, right? When we look across all the markets. And also what's interesting to observe would be tourism density. And needless to say, in the report, you will have very detailed overviews of all seasons, but of course I could not include all of these figures into my presentation. But I included the monthly one because I guess it does not come as a surprise that the total density was the highest in summer months. But what was very interesting for me personally to observe was that there was a growth, that the tourism density was higher in every single month compared to 2018, which is also a very interesting observation. And especially if you look at the monthly overview, the highest growth rate was actually in April, so which would be probably in line with the Easter holidays. Also, to give you more tips in terms of the yearly total tourism density over the entire year, if you look into the basically into total bed nights and the density for the year of 2019, the average density would be about 9.21 bed nights per citizen. And I had to split, I apologize, this chart in 2 parts because we could not fit it on one slide. But I guess no surprises when you see that the absolute leader when it comes to tourism density was Opatia, as every year, I would say. So they had 117.64 bed nights per citizen, which is, of course, massive. And of course, the whole sample is skewed by Opatia in this respect, followed by Venice and Lisbon. In continuation, you can also see some cities which had the density basically below the average here. And you see the least problems when it comes to the density were cities such as Lviv, Toulouse, St. Pölten in Austria, and then finally Nicosia, so lowest density. And quick preview in terms of bed supply, because if you recall, I was bugging you because many of you gave me bed nights, but then bed spaces were missing, and then I was emailing you, can you please give me bed nights as well? This was the reason. We wanted to show you the bed supply, what was happening over the last year. So in the report, of course, you will have more charts that are also investigating the performance over the last 5 years. Here, I'm just giving you a sneak preview into what was happening over the last year. So in terms of the percentage change between the 2 years, we see that the benchmark average for the sample of the cities who provided us the bed spaces, it was about 4.9%. So definitely a growth when it comes to bed supplies at the destinations. And you see the performance, the highest performers here were Eisenstadt, Vilnius, Brussels, Bratislava, and so on. So they were all of these cities were performing above the average. And here you can also see some cities that also recorded negative growth when it came to the bed capacities as well, right? So, and finally, in terms of bed occupancy, we also calculated bed occupancy. So here also percentage change. So the benchmark average when it comes to the bed occupancy in the last year was about 51.3%. And the best performance, meaning the highest bed occupancy, was recorded in Dublin, London, and Rome. So those would be our top three. And if you include also Paris and Seville and Ljubljana, those would all be the cities that had really high occupancy rates, so everything above 75%, which is very impressive. And also here you can see further continuation of the same chart. So we can also see that cities such as Split, for instance, in Croatia, Bregenz and Eisenstadt, they had the lowest bed occupancy in the recorded time period here. And also what we did in the report, like every year, we were comparing cities, how cities were performing versus nations, like EU 28 nations, and the performance in the source markets by investigating the market volumes. So these are the charts that you know really, really well and that we had in every single report. And you can see, if you focus on the international bed nights and ECM report cities, we can see that these international bed nights generated about 1 million based on the source markets distributions. If we look into EU 28, which of course also includes the cities, we have 1,439 million. However, this year we went a step further, and same like in the meetings report, you will get also a few charts, all new charts also from us in the benchmarking report. So what we were looking at, we were curious about ECM report cities share when it comes to these international bed night volumes, meaning we combined the two figures from the previous slide, because we often say that cities are performing faster, growing faster than the nation's bed nights, right? So here we wanted to demonstrate it to you. And what you see in blue would be the bed nights, international bed night volumes, which are generated by report cities. In red would be other regions, meaning nations minus cities, right? So everything but the cities. And the line will then tell you ECM report cities share, meaning in percentages in terms of EU 28 nations. So we can definitely see that, and especially in the case of Japanese source markets, we have a major dominance of cities. So this can give a very clear indication in terms of the power of ECM report cities when it comes to different markets. And these are also new charts that we wanted to show you, because in line again that cities are growing faster. So what we did here, you can see two charts. One, the right one, shows total bed night volumes in 2018, and the left one shows the same but for 2019. So comparison would be that cities grew basically at a rate of 4.4%, whereas other regions, meaning other than cities, grew at a rate of 1.5%, which is, these figures alone would demonstrate the importance of city tourism for us, right? And we can also see, if you're now nitpicking, we can, let's say, comparing all total bed nights, we can see that the market share of city tourism grew from 23.2 to 23.7% in only 1 year. So this is already a clear indication of the strength of city tourism. And then also the chart that you also know from previous reports, meaning what we wanted to show you is the average annual growth rate in international bed nights, and also that you see differentiation between the report cities and the 28 nations, again in terms of the average annual percentage growth when it comes to the markets. And finally, just a sneak preview in terms of what was happening in Premier League cities and second division cities. So I found these charts really interesting, this one in particular, because we can see when it comes to Premier League cities that, for instance, the blue color would indicate international bed nights, right? The yellow would indicate domestic ones, right? So here we see that when it comes to the Premier League cities, the big chunk, 58%, was the average on international bed nights when compared to the domestic ones. So clear indication of the power of the source markets here. And also the charts that you know, here we depict what was happening with source market bed nights growth indices over the period of 5 years time. So you can also see what was happening with the markets. So in the top one, you can see that the growth rate of China, for instance, 40.9%. And on the bottom one, you can also see the annual growth. So international bed nights were growing the fastest when compared to total and domestic ones. And then similar, of course, charts for the second division cities. So here we have the opposite case, right? So we have domestic market, which is stronger in comparison to international market as well. So which is the opposite of what we had at Premier League cities. And also in terms of the growth indices, we were also comparing what was happening here in terms of the source market bed nights. So here we definitely see a clear, powerful role of the Spanish source market and also the role of international when it comes to annual growth over the 5 years time. So what I wanted to do is basically, I really wanted to motivate you to trigger your interest, that you open the reports that you can find now on intranet. So this was just a sneak preview from my side. So of course, Carl and I remain at your disposal for any questions that you may have with regards to this particular report. And again, thank you very much, first for having us in this webinar and also for working with us to produce this report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bojana. Tremendous work, really fantastic. It's not just to portray and to kind of archive the developments we had throughout the last couple of years, but it's also important to learn from all these reports over time. And I think some of the learnings which are more important than ever in terms of management and policy making or advocacy are that cities are so much dependent on international, and I would actually argue also intercontinental travel. So when we see the most important source market for cities are the United States, and if we combine like all international markets, it's like 80 million bed nights. And so I think it's a call for the European Union also to reopen the European Union, to reestablish the single market. We are very much dependent on international travel within the European Union. So many cities such as Vienna are not big enough, or the domestic market is not big enough to fill our beds to fuel the visitor economy. It's also important to have a replacement of the travel restrictions, something like with a uniform EU travel regime. We need a common voice on that. That's of utmost importance, and I believe in the future will be also important, or in the future, the latest next year, we have to come up with some common understanding of something like a European, like a vaccination certificate. We need to have common rules, because most likely it will not be possible to travel without showing that you are either COVID negative or have received a COVID shot or like a vaccination against COVID. So before we move on to the Outlook session, do we have more questions from the audience? If not, now the discussion part starts more or less, and the second learning, and I think this is the introduction for Carl to take over, is a lot about what we can learn from also from seasonality, and also learn from the year 2020, because here we have some, I think, significant learnings, what we can expect in terms of recovery for certain source markets, but also for the different periods in time. Carl, I'm going to share my controls so we can move the presentation with the browser keys. And just a second. And Professor Weber is going to show you some of the latest trends for 2020 based on the data already available in TUMIS and his forecasting endeavors undertaken. The floor is yours, Karl.
Thank you very much, Clemens. Thanks a lot, and a very warm welcome also to everyone from my side. The delayed launch of this year's benchmarking report, which was just presented by Bosana, has also something positive at least. It is an opportunity for us to have a preview of the performance of the cities in the year 2020 first. And that's what I'm going to present to you right now. Of course, let's say, the story which I have to share with you is not as positive as Bosana presented to you. It's exactly the opposite, yeah. But at least I think it's very important to share this information for you, that you have, you know, a general overview about what's going on, and also I think we're gonna have an interesting discussion after that. Now let's see if my control works. I'm not sure. Here we go. Am I controlling now, or are you controlling, Clemens? Anyways, it seems like I'm controlling. All right, so we have at the moment all the data which I'm presenting to you right now is of course data which is available on TUMIS. We have 51 cities which report data for the year 2020 at the moment. And for me, to be honest, these are the heroes at the moment. These are the cities which really, even in the worst situation which we can imagine at the moment, are still monitoring their statistics, no matter what, how unfortunate they look like and how disastrous they look like, they are sharing it with us. And I think it's extremely important, and I will come back to this later on. Of course, not everyone provides data for the most recent months. Of course, we have no data for October, November, and December yet, but we have at least 13 cities who provide data for January until September, and we have 20 cities who provide data until August, 11 cities until July, and 7 cities who provide data at least until June. There are some more cities reporting data on TUMIS. However, they only show data for the first few months, and those cities have not been considered for this analysis. So you have to have at least 6 months of data to be included in this Outlook report. And these are all the cities and their period of reporting which is available. Now, these 51 cities, which are now part of the report, represent, let's say, 43% of all cities which are in the, let's say, in the previous year or benchmark report, which was just presented by Bosana. And those 43% of cities, they represent about 39% of the number of bed nights. So the tendency is that the list of cities, or the cities which are included here, are rather smaller cities, and actually the bigger ones are the ones we have not. The really big ones are the ones which we have only a few included in this Outlook report. So this is the performance of the year 2020 for those 51 European cities. As you can see, the data for January until June, which is marked in orange, is real data. So data which is actual data reported already by the cities in this Outlook report. The data from July until September is partially forecasted, and the data from October, November, December, which is highlighted in red, is full forecasted because we do not have any information entered by the cities yet. The partially forecasted data, for instance, for the month of July, is forecasted for 7 cities, which is 14%. For August, we had to forecast 18 cities, which is 35%. And for the month of September, we had to forecast 38 out of 51 cities. 75% of the cities have been forecasted for September. 25% of the cities in September have already entered real data into the system. You can compare now, this is the total number of bad nights, and you can compare the performance for 2020 with the performance of 2019, which are the blue bars actually in this graph. And the percentages which are included here in orange actually indicate the comparison between each individual month with the month of the previous year. So in January and February, the overall total bad nights of those 51 cities have been in both months higher than in the previous year. There was a plus of 5% and 6% in January and February. And then when the pandemic started, it significantly dropped to March, where we had only 33% anymore of the bad nights which we had in March of the previous year. So that's the way how you need to interpret the data which is highlighted here. So overall, as I said, those 51 cities represent 39% of all cities which we usually have in the benchmarking report, which is 266 million in terms of bad nights in total, whereas in the benchmarking report, in total we report 690 million at the moment. So when we look at the data, which is basically from January until September, we can say that from January until September, we record 68 million, which is a minus of 74%. And we expect for the rest of the year, the last 3 months, only a marginal, let's say, increase or improvement of the situation. So our estimation now is that overall, all ECM cities reporting in the ECM benchmarking report will, on total, have a minus of 72% of all compared to the previous year. What we can see in this graphic quite well is the impact of the pandemic, and you can see the waves of the pandemic reflected in the performance of the cities in this chart very well. This was the first, let's say, lockdown period, and now since most of the European cities are in the second lockdown period, we can see, and we're estimating a similar impact than we have observed in the month April, May, and June. Well, this was the total number of bad nights, and now we can have a brief look at the same chart for international and for domestic bad nights. And please keep in mind that the scale on the left side is exactly the same as in the charts, all through all charts. So you will have an impression about the total volume of international versus the total volume of domestic bad nights. Again, we can see the wave. Of course, we can see that internationally, city tourism was even harder hit by the pandemic than on the domestic part. I mean, the domestic part was actually the main contributor. Very overall, we could see at least some tourism volume during the peak summer month, like July and August, and we can see that basically during the lockdowns, international travel is almost non-existing for city tourism in European cities. So this is the chart for the domestic part. And as I said already before, same scaling. So you see overall domestic tourism is about 42% of total tourism in Europe. You can see that it's less important than international part in city tourism, different as, for instance, in rural tourism. And here we can actually see that in the month of July, August, we managed, or many cities actually managed quite well. So on average, we had let's say, a performance in the domestic market of in July, we can actually observe above 60%. And but nevertheless, of course, also here, overall, the domestic performance is estimated until September to be minus 66%, and for the total year 2020, it will be minus 62%. Now, if you look, of course, at the different source markets, now it's basically a same or similar picture. These are now percentages compared to the performance of each individual market to the previous year, 2019. And you see the leading drops, or the markets with the highest drops in terms of bed nights are the overseas markets, China, US, Japan, and but still also the other markets, main markets in city tourism are similarly I mean, negatively performing. What you can also see in terms of the predictions, also the predictions for the rest of the year is not very, let's say, positive. When you look at total foreign here, it's basically the same. It will stay. It will not change anymore. We will have let's say, a minus 80% on the international market over the entire year. And yeah, only for the domestic market we can see that the current, let's say, performance of minus 66% may reduce to a minus 62% in case of the last few months, that we can see some domestic traveling to cities in the period of October to December. Yeah, this is actually my last slide I'm going to show you. It's actually the outlook for 2020 for those 51 cities or hero cities which are participating now in the data collection process at Turmes so far. So this is the first, actually those two slides show exactly the same information. Yeah? They are just in a different sorting order. The first chart is sorted by nominal change, and the second chart is sorted by percentage change. It shows the change or the growth performance of city tourism in terms of total number of bed nights in the year 2020 for those 51 cities in the chart. And this is the normal, let's say, the standard sorting order, the first chart, which you normally see in the benchmarking report, and you will see the overall volume of Berlin. The blue bar is what we have observed so far, and the red bar is what we estimate. Sorry, the red part is the red bar is what we can observe so far, and the blue bar is what we estimate for the entire year, and the percentages also refer to the entire year here. And we can see basically the performance as visualized in the benchmarking report normally, but below, maybe more interesting, is sorted by percentage change, because it actually shows that we have cities which are most affected by the pandemic, which are the ones now on the right side of this chart, and cities which are least affected in terms of the number of bed nights. So mainly cities which have benefited from summer tourism, or which are basically close to quite successful regions in certain countries, which have had the opportunity to generate some level or quite some level of tourism during the summer period. They had the opportunity to, let's say, they all have a loss. I mean, everyone has a significant loss, but the one on the left-hand side are those which have been least affected so far, compared to the ones on the right-hand side. Well, this is the outlook for 2020 we have prepared. of course, it shows evidence for the huge damage city tourism has experienced this summer. And I really want to encourage all ECM members to use Tourmis in order to monitor what's going on, because I think it's extremely important that we are able also to provide evidence in the next year, and also to monitor the resilience of the city tourism in Europe. And I also would like to say that I invite everyone to go on the system and to continuously inform yourself about the performance of city tourism, because I think that these statistics give very good insights into what's actually going on and the effects of the pandemic. Yeah, and I will now hand over to Jason, because Jason will now say a few words about the outlook for the meetings industry for 2021.
Maybe we just take a question first, Jason, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Because we have a question from Ralph from Munich. Ralph, maybe you want to ask a question in person?
Yeah, I can do this. Hi, everybody. Great performance, Carl. You showed the seasonal. You showed the domestic market overnights a few slides before, and there was, as we can see there, just few seasonality in these bars. Yeah. So the question is, maybe is it because of a higher percentage of business travel in the domestic market than in the international market? Because business travelers travel throughout the whole year. And
yes, definitely, this is the case. Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is a strong impact by business travelers here. Yeah.
Okay.
Also some very important learning, and this became really evident, at least for Vienna. So throughout the crisis and the lockdown, we were rather surprised about the different guest mix share we saw in the city. So we had a lot of visitors from Poland and different nationalities, so the ranking changed, of course, dramatically. So that's also very important to learn about resilience of different nationalities and see whether this is just for one city or it's a general kind of development, that there are some nations more resilient than others towards traveling within Europe. And also when it comes to seasonality, I think it's really important what we also learned, and what could be the case for you as well, that you, especially during these times, the seasonal effects are much more important. So we have to think in major events. So the next opportunity to reach a target audience or to invite visitors to our cities is Christmas, but then it's Easter, because in January, February, nothing is going to happen. And so this will be probably a dark, cold winter, unfortunately, but this is something also we can learn from seasonality. But what else we can learn from all these statistics is we can look into different scenarios we have experienced in the past. And so even though the Eurozone crisis was rather different, it still showed which nations and which economies are more affected by an economic crisis and recession. So this might also give us an indication on our budgeting, on our marketing efforts, which source markets have more potential to still visit our cities and which don't. Some thoughts on that, and I think now we will have a sneak preview, 2 slides into the barometer, the meeting statistics barometer, and I'm going to hand over to Jason, if I manage here.
Okay, thank you, Clemens. So we'll just forward to, I just have 2 slides to share with everyone. So earlier I had mentioned that this year we started something new with the meetings report, the industry barometer. And so this is a qualitative forecasting that we're doing here and it's based upon 26 cities answering the questionnaire about their expectations for the meetings in their city in the future. So we asked cities to compare or to forecast their expectations based on local trends and advanced bookings for 2020 compared to 2019, and obviously everyone expects that to be devastated, right? But more interesting then too, we also asked them to forecast compared to 2020 how they expected the meetings in their city to change in 2021. And so we asked them to look at national meetings versus international meetings separately, and then so what's going to be the change, right? How strong is the recovery going to be? So from a greater than 10% increase to a 10% decrease, and what we see for national meetings, and keep in mind this was our experts' opinions back in August of 2020 when we were just coming out of our first wave of lockdown, but approximately 25% or 27% of our cities are expecting a much higher increase in the number of national meetings in 2021. However, 38% aren't sure and aren't able to really provide any forecast, which means then that we have 8% of our cities expecting a slightly lower or a slight decrease in the number of national meetings, and 15% of our cities expecting a more significant decrease as well. So the takeaway here is that it's really mixed, and there's a lot of uncertainty with regards to the recovery. So we have approximately one third of our cities expecting a recovery, another 1/3 expecting continuing decreases in the number of meetings, and then another third not sure. And we can see then when we look at international meetings, the outlook is a little more pessimistic for the number of meetings, where there's a larger share of our cities that are expecting decreases or things to stay about the same as they are in 2020. And so this is looking at the number of meetings, national meetings and international meetings. And for the final slide here, we can also look at the number of participants for international or national meetings, and we see very similar trends where again it's about an even split between the number of cities that are expecting a recovery. We have 20% of our cities expecting the number of national meeting participants to continue to decrease in 2020, and then 40% not sure. So again, we know that we have vaccines on the horizon, but how the COVID pandemic is going to change business travel in particular, it remains to be seen. But I think we're expecting, now that we have all of these technologies like Zoom, the number of face-to-face business meetings may never come back to its original pre-COVID levels. So those are some quick snapshots for the meetings industry and the 2021 outlook. So if anyone has any questions regarding this, again, qualitative study based, so these are mostly the opinions and sentiment of our cities rather than forecasts based on numeric data.
Thank you, Jason. I think most of us have understood already or seen already that it's not about demand anymore or only. It is also about the health of the visitor economy. So what we can see starting as of the second wave kicking into Europe, we also have a problem with our suppliers. And this is true for the meetings industry as well as for the leisure industry. So one thing, if we think about coming back or restarting tourism, we also have to check our networks, have to check our suppliers, have to check whether our airlines, our transportation networks, our hotels, our suppliers all over the cities and partners are still there. We can see a strong brain drain from the tourism industry already. So we really have to focus on management issues more than ever before we can really talk about marketing or make a difference in marketing to safeguard the future of our visitor economies in our cities. In our research and statistic group meetings, we have a lot of debates and discussions, of course, about developments, trends, data. And it's a great pleasure to also have Harry Mirpuri with us. He's the head of the research and statistics group working with London and Partners. And we've asked him to prepare some thoughts on latest trends we can take with us, what we have learned out of COVID, and probably also some sources which might be useful for us to monitor the development, but also the future development which can be seen in our cities. So Harry, could you share some of your insights and your learnings with us, please?
Thank you very much, Clemens. And of course, hi everyone. Saving the best till last is always, I think, the right thing to do. Conscious we've only got you for another 4 or 5 minutes today, so I'll just crack on. And hopefully you'll have the slides to look at later. So I thought I'd bring 6 kind of trends because I know you've heard what's clearly quite a pessimistic outlook for 20 and 21. But actually, there was a really big study by Expedia across many global markets, and they found that people are really eager to get back to traveling as soon as possible. 57% of their global sample said that they would book a holiday within 6 months as soon as they were felt allowed to, and 3/4 of people said it would be pretty much the same type of holiday that they would normally have. But that does suggest that there will be some changes. So I just wanted to talk through what are some of these trends that we expect to see that we should keep in mind in terms of how the travel behaviors might be changing. So first of all, people now expect enhanced cleanliness. It is part of their thinking. They know that the measures they take to protect themselves within their own countries will not be exactly the same, but they still have very high standards about what will be expected at the best and the top destinations. So safety used to mean different things to us over the last few years, now means hygiene, and that's very much top of people's minds. Secondly, when you ask them what's important, people want flexibility. Their ability to travel is changing all the time. The flights are changing and people want to be able to cancel and change plans and be treated with respect. Lots of people lost a lot of money last year and are still fighting for refunds, and they need to know that actually they can be flexible. Having said that, incentives do make a difference. A lot of people are impacted financially, and they also now expect that with upgrades and with incentives that you can actually motivate them to start traveling internationally again. And we saw lots of people go digital. People who never knew what Zoom was are now, having family Zoom calls across the world. And quite a lot of travel inspiration moved digitally. We all had virtual experiences where you could go and experience culture within your cities, and this kind of virtual showcasing is now part of the norm. So keep that in mind. Get people ready to book so that they really want to come to your city and are aware of what they want to do when they're there. But be mindful that people's interests are now changing. So we said, actually it was about 1/3 are saying they're going to have a different type of trip. Now, this might be how they get somewhere. So it could be how they travel, maybe not fly. They might travel by car. They might stay within a region, go to neighboring countries, or look for smaller towns or cities. And of course, the domestic market as well. So be mindful that people's travel behaviors are changing. And the expectation is that this will take some time. So we've got to do everything we can to get people to feel more confident to travel. I'll stop there, but I just wanted to share, which you can take away, a few different things that you can use, data sources, to kind of monitor what's happening on the ground. So it isn't just about bed nights anymore. People, you need to monitor what's happening in your core markets, the case numbers, the restrictions, so that you can have the right dialogue and invite the right people. You can also need to track how they feel. Are they inspired to come to you? Are you top of the list? And are you allaying any fears with any challenges they might have? And of course, do look at searches, bookings, and that kind of harder data to see, are people actually booking to come to you now? So in your pack, here's a few slides, a few links to the type of data we look at all the time in the Research and Statistics group, from the global status of Corona to what's happening with global travel movements, forecasts for different economies, consumer sentiment, and of course, booking data. Lots of this is available through the ECM hub, actually on the intranet, but here's some extra sources to go to, most of them free, or get in touch with those providers. So I'm out of time, so back to you, Clemens, but thanks everybody for your time today, and thanks to all the presenters as well.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what we can learn out of that is ask your analyst, ask your insights manager. I think now it's the time to make this invisible work we do for years visible, to make it actionable, to help you, guide you through this crisis, and to rebuild probably maybe a better version of city tourism in the future. You're always more than welcome, of course, to address us with questions also afterwards or by email. I think for now, or for today, we're out of time, or time is over. We will share, of course, the presentation and the slides with you. As I said, the reports are already available on the internet. Pauline is also so kind to share this recording, I think as of tomorrow, or by the end of the week at least, with all of us. And just being the moderator, I would hand over to Petra for final closing words. Yes, if you don't mind. We did not.
No, of course I don't. I agree with I've been listening to everything. Like usually I would prefer that we would meet in person, but again, we showed the resilience that, that we already adapted to, unfortunately, this time in a virtual version. And I agree with all the comments that went in the chat room during all the presentations. It has been a tremendous work done, and it shows a serious, not only a resilience, but also the actual flow of everything. And I firmly believe that we will never stop traveling, and we're going to go back on track in year 2, 3, we don't know. But what we did know or showed so far is that we do know how to adapt. It takes us a lot of energy, but we're professionals, and we will continue doing that. And again, all of the team, all of the listeners, and whoever participated in this tremendous common work, sincere thank you one more time. And I'm really looking forward to our common future work, but hopefully see you in person. Thanks, Clemens.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Take care. Stay safe. Stay well. And see you soon, hopefully in person, as you said. I agree. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.